30 years, I think.
Nothing like a good musical, is it? Documentary.
Where's the Lone Star?
If you took the F word out of that film, it'd be a silent movie. Okay then. PG part.
Can I just laugh?
Yeah. It's real.
Yeah.
Well, Kim, I'm going to put all the burden on you.
Yeah.
I mean, you're the kind of writer, producer, and even directed the last few shots of the film because Eagle was indisposed. So you carry the burden of having the overview of the complete project. And why did you select that project to do?
This particular project?
Yeah. Are these working? Do you have place?
Desperation.
Desperation.
Yeah, generally.
Can you hear him?
Well, you need to use the microphone.
I'm not tapping Kim is.
So when you're
How
typing,
close do we have to get?
you guys know how to use a microphone.
No, I don't.
Phil did the same.
Hello? You see, that's all right. Can you hear?
I don't want to answer that question. Why did I do it, Brian? I have no idea.
No, where did the idea of the Last Night at the Alamo, kind of a defunct bar come from? And why did you call it Last Night at the? Why did we call the bar the Alamo?
Well, that was crossing that line, making that last stand. The reason I think in part it's so apropos for this particular evening is because that bar was going down under the wrecking ball the next day, and it was the last gathering of those individuals who hung out and lived their lives to some degree in that bar. And this is that same sort of occasion. It's not going to hit the wrecking ball tomorrow, but in a matter of weeks, really.
Right.
This extraordinary place, and its history, will be wiped off the face of the earth. It'll be all gone, and everything that you spoke of before the film, will be no more.
I see.
And that film was not just a film about a building going down. It was about an era. It was about a way of life. It was about a kind of mythology that existed, the kind of Western philosophy succumbing to modernism. And in a way, we're faced with that dilemma in a different way here with, the demise of this building and as well the passing of a number of those figures that have been involved. And I think you're a little bit obsessed with, the fact that it won't be too long before we're all gone too. Sonny's resisting that idea, but
That's some work done.
Yeah, you mentioned Eagle and Lou and Phil Davis and Gordon, most of it.
Right.
All gone.
All gone.
The times are definitely changing. We're in a new world, and this kind of heralds its passing. So particularly appropriate, I think, film to be shown on this occasion.
Very good. But knowing you a little bit, it's hard for me to feel that you're totally sympathetic with the characters, all of the characters.
Well, you know, there was a kind of odd kind of conflict between my approach to things, which was all iconoclastic, and Eagles, you know, which sort of embraced who those characters were in a way.
Right.
So it was a kind of unique coming together for those differing points of view. You know, I looked at them as, I guess, a bit anachronistic, as people who were clinging to a notion about a world that no longer really existed. You know, whereas Eagle, I think, was more lamenting the passing of a time that, to me, existed only then as a mythology. It wasn't a reality. It never was a reality to me. And I wasn't upset to see it passing, frankly.
Yeah, no, I mean,
Yeah.
that's my sense of it.
Yeah.
That they're kind of brutal, vulgar characters.
Mm-hmm.
But
Well, I sympathize with them as individuals, but the kind of basic attitudes and beliefs that underlay their conduct, you know, particularly a character like the cowboy character. I guess philosophically modeled on our sense of what, you know, the men of the Old West were like. But of course, this was long past that reality. You know, right then what we had was kind of a sad imitation of the drugstore cowboys. You know, one of the reasons that I think it was so effective that very little things in the thing, like, I don't know if you guys recall, but there's a scene early on in the film where the sort of bad guy Steve walks in, and the first thing he does is knock over the house of cards. And in a way, that's what it signifies, or, you know, is emblematic of what the whole film is about, is knocking down that house of cards. And the Sonny character, and when he takes off his hat, doesn't have a full, you know, head of hair. He's sort of exposed as something less than the ideal of the. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a shock to the, whoa, cowboy.
you got to talk about Cowboy Highway.
Oh yeah, the Cowboy Highway. They had cast somebody in the role of cowboy that, shall we say, was taller than I am. And so when I came on as cowboy, who's the hero and the hero of the Alamo here, all the other people, and Steve and the other characters were taller than I am. You know, you can't have your hero, I'll kick your ass. So what they did is get what's called apple boxes, half apple boxes, as, you know, production material that you walk, you know, you did a lot of film magic, you know, where you're not eyeball to eyeball with the person on screen, so you stand on a crate, you know, like a Coca-Cola crate, wooden crate, and so every morning I'd come into the set, I could tell, we call it the Cowboy Highway, because they'd have a line of these crates. Okay, that's where I go today. Yeah. And every now and then there'd be an outtake where I'd miss my mark in my head. I'm okay. It's just movie magic, you know, see, but you had to keep up the appearance, and that is emblematic of the cowboy and the Old West, the myths of the Old West. If we were all there, if it was a documentary, you know, no, he didn't do that, you know, the myth, the story of the, you know, going back to the original Alamo, you know, Davy Crockett swinging a musket, you know, okay, probably, you know, if there, I'd say if there was a back door to the Alamo, there wouldn't be a Texas. You know, you believe what you want to believe, and it's that turning of the page. You know, people need to have that sense of, okay, here's the new and here's the old, and bless his heart and rest his soul. Eagle was one that held on to that when we were doing a fight scene, he said, I said, get your camera over here, and I'll fake it like they do in film. Looks like I hit him on the chin. And Steve, actor, was saying, no, you can go ahead and hit me. Eagle said, yeah, go ahead and hit him. And I said, no, it won't. I'll be all right. I said, well, what about my hand? Stupid, take two? No. So he'd hold on to that. Where the reality of it, again, if you look back in history, if you were there, taking a documentary approach to it, it wasn't anywhere theatrical or, any chapter or any episode in history that, okay, yeah, that it's a good story, but we didn't do it that way. So, Cowboy is that guy that, again, people have asked, what's the most hurtful or shocking or piercing critique you've ever heard after film, or you're bald? That was that thing that, whoa, Cowboy. I still got that hat, by the way.
Woo!
We're just a little more developed than the great apes. If you believe in evolution.
Tina, you had the burden of being the production manager.
Well, I was involved very early on. I met Eagle, when I graduated from Rice, I worked in architecture for a while, and I want to say something for those of you who are associated with Rice. I thought I wanted to be a biochemist, then I majored in architecture, then I double majored in architecture and art, which was this place. And it was incredibly important to me as a student to have this place. And I kind of, even though I graduated in '77, I kept kind of like hanging out, and I worked in the artisan schools program. Ed Hughes and Swamp were involved in that. And I met Eagle at a screening here. And he said, I got this idea. He said, if you can corral those students, because I was doing these documentaries with, Super 8, James was the Super 8 person with kids all over Texas. And 5 years, fifth grade on up, 4th grade on up. Anyway, he said, well, you can be a production manager. I said, what's that? He said, well, you got to manage the money and get all that stuff and get the crew together and get everything going. And he started, and I helped him write the first grant, and the first grant. We worked with the Swamp to do that, and there was somebody else who would be completely unnamed before you were associated with. And I said, no. He said, well, I know this guy, Kim Hinkle. And I said, well, but he's written this horror thing. I said, he's a writer. He's a writer. You need to talk to Kim. I don't know who this. Anyway, so I was involved in between doing my little, gigs with the students and all that stuff that was going on, and so that was my stuff. And I found that, I really did a lot of things. Let's see, I wrote all the checks, so I was kind of the accountant. I brought the coffee and the stuff in the morning. I did, the catering, it was like, if it had to be done, at one point, the truck got wrecked, and we needed it for the final scene, which we shot here. And I found a neighbor. I said, I'm doing this movie, and we need this truck for the final. I said, can we rent your truck? It's a good match for a day. Oh yeah, anyway. So it was all of this stuff. So I would be over in a booth in the corner writing checks to pay the bills and pay the actors and stuff. And running around with petty cash and doing that stuff, and then, and then just trying to get things organized and trying to get Eagle organized in the middle of stuff. And I love that, by the way, the scene, he's fighting with Eric Edwards, who shares co-DP credit with, in the scene where that's his Eagle's cameo. He's fighting with Eric. I don't know if you probably didn't catch that at the end, but it was an interesting process, because we had to, we found this bar, and somehow I convinced them, I don't know how, honestly, that, if we were wrapped out by 3 o'clock in the afternoon with all the, they had arranged all the lighting fixtures were like in the ceiling so they could still open for business. We couldn't disturb their business. So we were like the night crew. We went in at somewhere between 2 and 3 in the morning when the bar closed, did our thing. And then we were wrapped out so that they could open. And it, and it was kind of like the whole the whole thing. And I think the last bit was, you know, it was a small grant, and we owed Duart $5,000. We had been accepted into the Sundance Film Festival, and there was the last $5,000 that was missing. And I don't know, this was the summer of '83, and I wandered around, and my friends said, hey, do you know anybody who might want to go? And I just sort of like a random moment with random people found this random person who was an art person who I met through just a chance, said, well, so-and-so, you know, they might really like to invest in something like that. Really? And I called the person up and I said, you know, we need $5,000. And she said, well, I'm having a party. Come on down. We'll talk about it. You can stay in the game anyway. So that was the last, the last sort of like thing. So anyway, about that time, they kindly said, you know, you did a lot more than a production manager. You're going to have some sort of producer title, because I was, you know, I was kind of, you know, okay, because I was, you know, that was my first sort of thing, and then it was very interesting, and it was equipment from here. But as a student who went to this incredible university and was part of this media center during the Jane, I feel very grateful to have been part of that. And I think that the spirit of that will go on. I, by the way, just finished a 15-year stint after going into the film business and away from documentaries and stuff as a teacher at a performing arts magnet school in Los Angeles, part of LAUSD, and I'm very grateful that, you know, as I feel as much as I could, the energy of James Blue and this place and Colin and all of those people, you know, I transferred to my students and stuff. So I think as a Rice, you know, I really think that it will continue, because there is a place of arts. Art is very important in education, and this place is very important. And I refuse to take a glim view, although I looked fondly at a room that was like, yes, that's the editing room I spent many hours in as a student here. And my first job was a projectionist here. That was my work-study job. So I am so grateful to be part of this. So I wanted to be here for the last thing, and I was just so disappointed when COVID happened last year. I was like, oh, we can't go. But anyway, it was great. And seeing this again, I wanted to see it in the middle of the front row, because my first experience at the Media Center as a student here was, oh, that's that funny building where they show movies. And at that time, there were director's chairs. In this whole front, there were beanbag chairs. And as a student, you just kind of like laid on the front row and watched the screen. You know, you sort of, that was the vibe of this place. It was this energy where things were happening and interesting films were going on. And I was, you know, I was taking other stuff. I was like, hey, I think I want to take a class over there. That looks, that's pretty interesting. So I hope that that energy continues. And I loved very much your opening, Brian, what you had to say. And Kim, this was just great to see all those people. And I remember when Henry White, who played Willie, passed away. And a lot of those actors, you know, I happen to remember him. They've gone on. They've gone on. But they live on.
Well, so does anybody have a question? Yes.
So the old barn where you filmed, we were just looking it up, and all we can find is that it was in East Houston. Do you all remember exactly where it was?
Yeah,
it was on navigation. It was on navigation, and that whole area has changed.
You know the old coffee factory?
Yeah, right.
Which is no longer a coffee factory. It's almost opposite that. It's a little south, and it's an empty. It's gone. There's no structure.
It's not there anymore, right?
We had to be out of there a certain time because the coffee factory was like 3 or 4 days.
But all the guys from the coffee trade came to drink.
Regular hangout. We had a shuffleboard table we had to move out of the way.
Oh yeah, the shuffleboard
table. Oh, I'd
table.
forgotten about that. Every day.
All hands on deck.
You see, I'm a documentary filmmaker, and this was a journey onto the dark side. This bar is a real location. And so my whole background is to respond to what's there. You don't screw with it. You know, you don't put your thumbprint on it like these guys do.
Well,
You just you dance with what's there, and I wanted to work around the damn shuffleboard table. Let's use it. Let's integrate that into the thing. You know, they kept the pool, but no, it was going to get in the way of Cowboy Highway.
Yes, it was the Cowboy Highway and the shuffleboard table.
Well, I kept seeing the shuffleboard sign in the front window, and I thought, where's the shuffleboard?
Exactly.
that's like the old barn, the location we shot at. A couple of years later, after the film had come out, and my daddy was coming through Houston. You know, we lived in Houston for a while, but had a place here. He stopped in there to have a beer, and you know, my son was in last night at the Alamo, and the guy said, "Oh, okay, big deal, we don't care." they were expecting, I think, it to be, you know, the film last night at the Alamo to turn it into, you know, what Gillies did, what, you know, John Travolta did for Gillies out there, and it never happened. It really wasn't the tour buses didn't come by, that's where they shot. Okay, keep driving. But it was I went in there after we shot.
Yeah.
It was real.
Yeah, we got that location. One of my brothers is a lawyer, and he'd gone to law school with a guy named Richard Petronilla, whose father owned that bar, and that's how we came to that bar to use it. That it actually had that facade that looked a little bit like the Alamo. Was purely coincidence, you know.
They like one of the myths in show business.
Yeah.
You'll never know a film company's been in here. Well, leave our scars, our marks.
Yeah, Fletcher he made the sign and put that up there. And I think they left it.
For a long time.
For a long time,
and then
they left
the letters started
falling
falling
off.
Yeah, and it was actually called the Old Barn.
Yeah.
Were those the letters up there when we arrived?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I forgot.
Hey,
Yeah.
Brian, it's on Harrisburg and Eastwood, and now the light rail goes right past it.
Exactly. So the streets completely changed
Yeah,
because
it's
they've
not-
added a light rail. Yeah. Anyone else? Yes.
Well, I had a couple questions in terms of was a lot of it some of it improvised, number one, and number two, casting. I mean, I can imagine. I'm an independent filmmaker too, and I know playing all parts. And I finally got a production manager, which made all the difference. It saved me in the feature that I did a long time ago. And how was it casting, and how many balls were in the air that you were involved in, and how did you guys get the great characters that you have? Besides the three of you guys.
Well, we had to drag Sonny kicking and screaming onto the set. I'd actually written those two roles for Lou and Sonny, but they, you know, sometimes Eagle was a little bit difficult. You know, they alternately, you know, had a kind of love-hate relationship with Eagle, and so I had to persuade them both to come to the film.
Well, yeah, he was difficult to deal with, and we got through it, and he's a good filmmaker, and bless his heart, bless his soul. I moved to LA from Austin, and was, you know, getting some work, and I'm going, okay, go back to Houston with Eagle, but this man here, Kim Hinkle, was responsible for it all, really, personal relationships and production and creativity. It would not have happened at all with him, and he brought people under the best behavior to, I mean, I don't know, to Houston for how long did we shoot? What, 10 days or something?
It's a little more than that.
Yeah, it was 4 weeks.
4 weeks.
Because we couldn't shoot on the weekend, because of course, you know, that was prime drinking time. we really had to shoot Monday through Friday, you know, and be wrapped out by 3. So, you know, we really, you know, some scenes we actually staged in the parking lot of the media center.
That's right. All the stuff in the cars.
All the stuff in the cars, yeah.
We're just can't be filmed because the Moody Center has ruined our location.
What about improv? Was improv used, or was it mostly scripted, or probably both? I imagine.
Say that again. I couldn't.
Was some of it improvisation on the set, and then a lot of it I know was scripted. But did you have to come up with stuff on the fly when it wasn't working?
Eagle was very eager to get things rolling, so I hadn't even finished the first draft, and so I was writing on the backs of napkins on the set every day.
That had a real impact on the shooting too. Because as you said, you got the ball rolling. So there's a whole bunch of footage that never saw the light of day, which was shooting kind of ethnographic footage of life around the barn with all the secondary players.
Yeah.
All that wonderful stuff.
Yeah.
Wonderful stuff that
it was still, to my mind, writing a first draft is always overwritten. So, I think it suffered a bit from that, and I think, our wonderful cast did a good job of, cutting through to the core of things sometimes. I remember in particular the scene where Sonny's on the telephone trying to get the political buddy to help out. That scene was probably, twice that long, and Sonny just cut right to the core of it,
Well, that's the lines.
Yeah. So.
Well, it was Eagle that insisted that everything be filmed in sequence, in order, in script order. Which, if anybody who's worked on things, it looks like that, but in the reality, you do not film in script order. But we did, and so Kim basically, I don't know how he did it. There was a script, there was a written script, but there were new pages, drafts that occurred, and changes that occurred all along. But because we had to wrap by 3, so there was all that time before we had to be back at 3 in the morning.
There were some very positive things about that too, because the original concept was somewhat different from what we finally did, and I think being there on the set, shooting day to day, the story evolved. Yes, right. The relationships with the characters and everything.
Sort of like Mike Lee.
Out of that, from that process too, in a positive way. I want to say one thing about Eagle and all of that stuff is that one thing that I think Eagle did very, very well is cut through to the core of what was important in those scenes, because they were grossly overwritten, and I think that was one of the great things that he did was get really to the heart of things.
Thank you.
Why was it shot in black and white?
Eagle liked to say
That
those
was
were his favorite colors.
That was a stylistic choice, and we budgeted very early on.
I
We wanted to shoot in black and
color
white.
film had been invented. It was a choice. Economic choice.
Well, it kind of looked cooler in the black and white.
Yeah,
My skin tones.
Like an art film.
he wanted that look. He was an independent sort. This was a tiny budget with a grant, and it was.
And he was very enamored of that era of filmmaking and those directors from those times, John Ford.
Anyway, he saw things in black and white terms. Eagle told me that while we were making the film early on, because I asked about the ending, is it gonna...
He didn't know.
Yeah, he did. His plan was that the guys were going to get on the roof with their deer rifles. And that was actually going to happen, and make a stand against. But obviously he was indisposed at the end, and so he.
Well, it wasn't just that. It was part of what I said as an evolution, and that was some of our original thinking, and that would have been a sad way to do it, and I'm glad we came to what we did in terms of the way we ended it, but it definitely evolved.
Yeah, Eagle, I think, would have preferred like a big shootout with bullets and bodies and stuff. But I think you know, you put a hard button on something like that, it's just kind of, well, you know, but you kind of leave it open. These guys are moving on or whatever, they're turning the page, or maybe they're going over to this new bar or whatever, but, you know, let the audience help with that. And instead of just, you know, the end, you know. Yeah, there's good films that just have that firm, definite ending. But there's some that are just, oh, you know, let's let the individuals enjoy that or write it, or, you know, again, it's not just like the end, you know, story over. It's has that never ending. And here we are.
I have something to say. Again, my favorite scene, I think, in the film is when you and Lou are outside and you're trying to persuade Lou's character to go to Hollywood with you because, because the only people there are John Travolta and Clint Eastwood is obviously somehow out of the realm of consideration. Whatever. But anyway, they need guys like you out there. And you know, in the context of watching the film, I guess we kind of get it that this is a totally unrealistic kind of idea that you seem to believe in. But I just want to say that now we jump ahead. What is this, 1984, when this film was released?
Yeah.
Well, we jump ahead 5 years to 1989. I'm sitting at home watching television, and there's a new big TV Western. I like Westerns. And so there's a big one, it's called Lonesome Dove, the original Lonesome Dove. Yeah. And so I'm watching it, you know, it goes on for days. You know, I begin to realize that there's a character in the background that looks really familiar, and it's this guy's grin. It really stands out. And he was in Lonesome Dove. It actually happened. It's where like real life and this fiction actually intersected. And he did go on to Hollywood, and there he is riding with Tommy Lee Jones.
Well, I like to say I was the bald-headed actor behind the camera. Bobby Duvall, I'm the other bald-headed actor in Lonesome Dove.
You were staging him?
I just had one line. Better than possum. It's not what you say, it's how you say it. You know, like, come on, Ted. But it's Bill Whitlock, got to know the key projects with him. But yeah, I had, you know, it was a good gig. If I may right quick on Lonesome Dove, I was up for the role of one of the Irish brothers in the Hat Creek outfit, the cattle company, and because I did Red-Headed Stranger with Whitliff and Willie Nelson, and I'd come back. I'd been reading Lonesome Dove, and I was coming back down. My wife Jenna and I were coming back down for the premiere of Red-Headed Stranger, and somebody said out in LA, said, you know, Bill Whitliff is writing the screenplay, is going to be executive producer on Lonesome Dove, and so I'm at the opening party with Morgan Fairchild and stuff for Red-Headed Stranger, and I was drinking back then, and I say, hey Bill, what's my role in Lonesome Dove? And he made the mistake of saying, how's your Irish accent? And the rest of the evening, I'm drunken leprechaun. Belly me lad. It's a long night. But he gave me the role, you know, one of the Hat Creek outfit, and the Irish brothers, the characters, they worked for 2 weeks. We ended up being
3 months.
3 months.
3 months.
Hey, and I did steal some more books. I have that part too. Tip to you actors. Okay, well, next show's still there.
Anybody else want to ask anything? I think, you know, I think they've got something set up in the gallery area. So if you want to stay around longer and chat with people less formally.
Thanks for coming out.
Thank you.
Thank you.